Hey, Renter Retires, it's Adam Schrader here with another episode, and I am joined by Jennings Smith. He is the founder and CEO of My First Million and Multifamily. We're going to talk a little bit about single family, a little bit about multifamily, but most importantly, we're going to talk about the real estate investor mindset. Jennings, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Adam, appreciate you having me on the show. I'm excited to be here.
Well, fantastic. So we always like to learn from people. How did you get started in real estate?
Yeah, absolutely. I was a contractor for 15 years. Right out of high school, I got my builder's license. I didn't end up going to college, but I was building, spec homes, rental homes during the summer. And so I graduated in 2006 and I was on top of the world, making six figures and building custom homes, renovations. And I thought, I'm pretty smart. I'm a great contractor. And then we all know 2009, 10, I went from that to, I owed the IRS 15 grand. I owed Home Depot credit card 10 grand. My company was losing $50,000 ahead of these employees. I had bought a house to renovate. We were over budget. Literally, everything kind of went against me in 2010, and I almost lost my home. I was in a rental home, and just scraped through that. But what that did was it made me realize, like, I'm not prepared, right? I'm in a cyclical business and I'm not prepared. When I went from making 150 grand a year to going door to door, trying to install those little security peep sites. I'd buy them from Home Depot for $5 and after work, I'd knock on 20, 30 doors and I'd install 5 or 6 to make an extra $100. And it was like, I can't go back here. This is so painful and so humbling. And yes, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to put food on the table and provide, but there's got to be a better way. And so I kind of saw rentals as a way to do this, and I started to focus on that. So the first deal I ever did was a couple of years out. I dug out of that hole, and I saved up $5,000, and I bought a double wide mobile home in North Charleston, South Carolina. I'm in Somerville, South Carolina, and yeah, I bought it. I moved a guy in. Within 2 or 3 months, he wasn't paying because, of course, I didn't run a background check on him. I didn't do any. I just was like, "Oh, you got some money? Sure, move right in. This is awesome." And the dogs tore up the mobile home. Finally, got him evicted. I had to put down another $5,000 to fix it all up again. And so now I'm into the trailer for 15 grand. I end up selling it for 15 grand. I broke even, and I thought, man, I don't know if I want to do this. Like, real estate doesn't work. But I kind of realized, well, what did you do wrong? Okay, you didn't have the right client. You didn't verify his income. You didn't verify that he had a job. You didn't pull credit. And
you did everything the banks were doing back in 2008.
Exactly. So I tried again. I bought another trailer for $7,000 that was already rented at $700 a month. And that was great. And I bought another one, and I bought another one, and I bought another one. And a couple of years later, I had, I think, 5 or 6 trailers, and I had bought a rental home, scraped together 20, 30 grand, put it down on a rental home. And then a few years later, scraped down another 20 grand, put down another for a rental home. And that was awesome. But now I have 7 properties. I'm making a few $1,000s a month in cash flow, and I'm seeing my net worth in these 2 houses way more than the rentals. Or the trailers. Those were just kind of cash flow plays. But seeing my net worth grow, but realizing this is really slow. Like, if I want to have 1,000 units, because I wrote down, I was like, I want 1,000 rental homes. If I want to have 1,000 rental homes, this is going to take me like 50 years at the pace that I'm going to save up a down payment, and even to source that many deals, to find that many good single family homes. And so I decided I've got to go the commercial route. I've got to scale. Like, the people that really have a lot of resources, they seem to trend towards commercial real estate. And so I don't know how to do that, but maybe I can learn. And that's what pushed me into commercial was ability. I wanted to be able to scale. I wanted to have, a large portfolio, not just a couple rental homes for my retirement, because I wanted to get out of construction. I was sick of it.
Yeah. And so do you still own some of your single families today, or are you strictly commercial?
I actually don't. I sold them off a couple years ago. and I utilized that cash to make the turn to go full time into real estate and quit my business. I sold my business for a couple 100,000, owner financed, and then I utilized the I just did the math, right? The houses were worth $250,000. My mortgage was like $70,000, and I'm renting them for $1,300 a month. And so I just couldn't justify tying up that much capital to make that little return. And so I sold the single families, and I didn't put it into multifamily because I raised capital, but I used it as a buffer to just feel safe, a security blanket. Like as you do these big deals, you need more money in the bank, right? For things that go wrong. And so that's kind of was my thought with that.
Yeah, I love that you say you ran the numbers, because I always talk about how real estate is really just a mathematical equation that happens. Now, obviously, you have to vet your tenants, as you discovered, and you have to do your due diligence on it. But in the end, some people come to us and they're like, well, the house, doesn't have this on the front, or it's painted this color. And it's like, no. None of that matters. Let's look at the numbers and see, because the numbers aren't going to lie to you. The numbers are going to tell you whether it's a good deal or not. So when you had your single families, what were some of the things you looked at whenever you were buying your homes? As you said, your trailers were primarily a cash flow play. How did you find those also? But then what did you look for in your single families?
Gotcha. So for single families, I was a builder, right? And so I just thought, man, I'm gonna look for stuff that I know is gonna last. So with the climate I'm in, crawl spaces are a nightmare. There's moisture issues, there's termites, whatever. So my first rule was I want slab on grade. I want to get slab on grade houses. I'd like to get 3 bedrooms and at least 1.5 baths. 2 baths is best, but at least 1.5 baths. And then I want at least a 1-car garage, or even just a half-car garage, but it's got to have some storage. And because I know those are very popular, right? And so I was no big mogul with single family. I only owned 2, but I saw that even in the trailer world, that the 3 bedrooms rented out a lot easier than 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. And so that was something I stuck with. And then, the 1% rule. I was like, can I get it? If I can buy this house for 100,000, can I rent it for 1,000 a month? I stuck to that in identifying those houses. And then it kind of got better from there as the market pushed me forward. And I still use that acid test with multifamily. I'm like, if I can't be in for at least 1%, and multifamily, I'm really trying to get like 1.3, 1.5% or more. And then I'm not even really looking at that deal. It just doesn't, I don't understand the people that are buying multifamily for 180,000 a door and renting it for 1,500. I don't see how they're cash flowing. Maybe I don't think they're not cash flow. I don't think they are cash flow. I think they're just banking on this is going to become better in the future. And if you have deep enough pockets to do that, then more power to you. But I just never felt comfortable doing that.
Yeah. And so how did you source a lot of people know how to source like single family homes, whether it's, through us or Zillow or MLS or whatever. But what about the trailer homes? How are you finding those?
So I had a friend, my roommate in college, his dad owned a mobile home park, and I sat down with him, and this thing was immaculate. It was beautiful, full. It was only 68 lots, but it was his full-time living. He sat in a trailer all day, his office, and he made like $180,000 a year just doing that. And he didn't work very hard at all. And I'm like, okay. And he sold it. I think he sold it for $2 or $3 million a few years later. But I went to him and I said, how do you do this? What's the best way to get started? And he said, look, I've done really, really well with owner financing. So what you do is you go to mobile home park owners and you ask them if they have any issues, right? Because a lot of times mobile home park owners and the managers especially, they don't want the houses. They just want the lot rent. And so they maybe just evicted somebody. Maybe somebody abandoned one. Maybe they tried to sell one owner finance and the person flaked out. A lot of times they will sell you that mobile home pretty much at cost, right? They're just like, look, if you just pay the lot rent, we'll I don't want to say give you. I mean, when I started, they would almost give it to you. Now it's a little bit more competitive, but they would sell it to you for $5,000, $7,000, something like that, and you fix it up. And my model was it's got to be livable, because if you're trying to sell these things like they need $10,000 worth of renovations, your client doesn't have that kind of money. They don't have the money to put the down payment down and then renovate it. But if you can get it livable, and you can get the down payment like $2,000 or $3,000, and then you can, I would amortize it over 6 or 7 years, get that payment pretty much right at rent or a little higher than rent would be. And the lot rent is flexible. The insurance and taxes are flexible. Those can move, but then their mortgage is fixed. And then I just amortized it over 7 years. And I mean, I did it 7 or 8 times. I only had one default. So it worked pretty well once I figured that out. But you have to have some cash. I mean, you have to have cash to buy it, and you have to have cash to renovate it if it needs renovation. And so I kind of moved away from that because it got very difficult to find it, and they were labor intensive, and I could only do it in my market. So with multifamily, I could buy out of market, I could buy nationwide, and it was a lot more attractive to me.
Yeah. So let's talk about your first multifamily deal that you were talking about. Well, first off, I assume that your single families were in your local market as well.
They were. Yep.
So tell us a little bit about your first multifamily deal. Did you stay, you mentioned you can go out of state, out of market for it. Was your first multi at home, or did you go outside of the home market for it?
I went out of market. It was in North Carolina. So it was about a 5-hour drive away. So not across the country, but seriously not. I mean, I think I only went there 2 or 3 times in the whole time I owned it. But this was a 12 unit. They had it listed for, I think, $250,000, which is cheap. But it was in a small market, 5,000 people, no growth, a little town called Williamston, North Carolina. And but it was a good town. It wasn't a dying town. The rents were like $375, $400. It was all 1 bedroom, 1 baths. And they were losing money, right? When you looked at the financials, I mean, they were not losing a ton, but they were not making any money. And so this older gentleman wanted to sell it. He had a large portfolio. This one was way out in the middle of nowhere. He didn't own anything else around it, and he just wanted to sell it. And it was publicly listed. I found this deal on Crexy. So everyone talks about there's no deals on LoopNet. There's no deals on Crexy. There are, but you have to find ones where you see something that other people don't see. So when I dug into this deal, I realized, okay, they're getting killed on water and sewer charges, and they're double paying for their trash, right? There's a dumpster on site, and they're paying city taxes for trash can service. So I could get rid of the dumpster, get them all trash cans. I could implement a utility bill back system, and I could make money with this deal. So once I kind of researched and uncovered that, I made the guy an offer, and I asked him if he would owner finance me because I couldn't get a loan. Now, I told him I couldn't get a loan because his financials weren't any good, but really, I couldn't get a loan because I couldn't have gotten a loan, honestly, for that. I don't think. I didn't try, but I don't think I could have. So he said, yeah, I'll finance you 70% for 5 years, and then you got to refinance me out or sell it. So I said, okay, cool. But now I needed the down payment, which was $75,000 plus some closing costs, carrying costs. I needed about $90,000. And so I had taken a course on how to do this stuff, and I wrote up my little offering memorandum, and I went to an investor, and he was like, no, this is way too small of a market, and I don't like this deal, blah, blah, blah. It's like, all right. Went to a couple others, and I got somebody that said yes. He said he'd be interested. And so I sat down. I said, listen, I'm going to give you 40% of the deal. I get 60%. This is the plan. I'm going to implement this bill back. We're going to make it profitable, and you're going to make money. I'm going to make money. He said, well, why don't I get 60% and you get 40%? And this is where I pushed back a little, because I said, look, deals are hard to find. This is a great deal. Yeah. It's a needle in a haystack. I found it, and money's everywhere. Money's plentiful. And for your listeners out there, there's this kind of scarcity mindset where you look at these big commercial deals and you think, well, yeah, but I'd need $1 million down payment. So you don't even think about it anymore. You just dismiss it. Your brain dismisses it because it seems impossible. And it's not. There's so many people out there that have capital that want to put it in good deals. They want to put it in safe deals. They want to make a return, and they just don't know how to do it. So if you can bring the skill and you can bring the deal flow, you can find money. Now, the money doesn't just appear out of thin air. Like, you have to work to build these connections, but it's there. And so when I said money's plentiful, this is a good deal. If you don't want to do it, I'll find somebody that does. He's like, well, okay, I'll do it. I'll do the deal. Hold your horses. So he did the deal, and we just straight up split. No preferred return, just 60-40 split. And yeah, within 3 months, we were cash flowing. So it went well. The units were in good shape. I walked them all, good tenant base. I implemented the RUB system, the utility bill back system, and raised rents a little bit, $25, but I got it making money. And so it was spitting out distributions of maybe $2,000, $3,000 a quarter. And then 18 months later, I got an offer. I got an offer for $415,000, and I'm all into this thing for, 250, 260. And so we took that deal, gave the investor his money back, and yeah, he made $60,000. I made $100,000, and I was like, this is amazing. I love it. But that was my first deal, and it gave me the confidence to close more. Right. So if you're out there listening, it's like, you know how I'm talking about. Once you close that first rental home, you have the confidence of what to look for, how to do it again. And when you're raising capital, there really is no limit, right? My limit was I don't have another $30,000 for the down payment. Whereas when you unlock how to partner and do joint ventures, there really is as long as you can find good deals, you can continue to close. And so over the next 2 to 3 years, we closed 1,000 apartment units and 500 self-storage units and built a portfolio of $60 million. Now I don't own that 100%, but I own I own 25%. My cousin owns 25%, and our investors own the rest. So,
yeah, and I think that's one of the things that people get discouraged about whenever they hear these massive success stories. Is people say I own 1,000 units, kind of like, but what you were just saying. They don't really own 1,000 units. They control 1,000 units potentially, but people have to realize, they're hearing these stories, and it's not that I am the sole owner of an apartment complex that has 1,000 doors, and I'm so successful. They've gone out, they've done the work, they found this. So that was your first deal. What was your second deal?
You're saying something that is super critical, and I think it really matters who we listen to, who we're taking advice from, and who we're modeling. Because if you're in the rental home, he's got 100 rental homes. That means he owns 100 rental homes. Maybe he has debt on some of them, but he owns 100 rental homes. Syndications, typically, the GP is only getting 20 to 30% of the deal, and then that's being split up between 3, 4, 5, 6 people sometimes. So they may only own 3, 4, 5% of 1,000 doors, which is the equivalent of owning, 50 doors, right? Which is still cool, but it's not 1,000, right? And so, and how many market cycles have they been through? How old are they? There's a lot of different models. I mean, I'm like the C class value add. It's got a cash flow, and I like deals that the GP side can keep 50, 60, 70% of the deal. We can borrow private money for the down payment. We can get seller financing for the down payment. We can do creative strategies, because I'm not going to do a deal where I only own 3-4% of that deal.
Yeah. So you got your first deal done. You had your investor. He was obviously happy with what he's pulling out of there. Did that change the way did he come back and just say, hey, you made me money, let's get a second deal? Or did you have to go out and source he's new investors, or kind of talk about that escalation?
Okay. Good call. So the next deal we did was 18 units. So it wasn't, and I kind of advise people, start with something that you can get your hands around. Don't be like, I need to go buy a 50 unit or 100 unit. Go after an 8 unit, go after a 12 unit, 15 unit. Those are like usually $1 million or less, and you can get your hands around them. You can raise a couple $100,000. you may be thinking, I can't raise $2 to $3 million, and you can, but it takes a while to build that base. Okay. So yeah, I started with an 18 unit, and yeah, we bought it for 750,000. We needed to raise 250,000. And we partnered with a loan sponsor. So here I needed to get a loan, right? I needed to get a loan and the renovations. And so I met a guy at a conference. We built a relationship. He came in and said, I like this deal. I'll sponsor the loan and I'll bring the down payment. He didn't really bring the down payment. He raised it from his network, but we got that deal done with him. And so his kind of investors brought the money for that. Then the next deal we did was a 63 unit in Charleston for like $5 million. It was a $3.8 million purchase and $1.2 million renovation. So now we're talking big boy deals, and we needed to raise $1.2 million. And the loan sponsor said, we'll sponsor the loan, but we're not bringing the down payment. That's on y'all. So they said they would help us raise it, but we had to figure it out. And so I found a guy who said, hey, I can raise the money for you. I'll bring you $1 million. You just raise 200 grand. I can raise the $1 million. I said, cool. So we gave him equity, or we would give him equity. And about 3 weeks out from closing, he comes back. It's like, dude, I can't raise this money.
I don't have $1 million bucks.
I think he had raised like 200,000. And to be fair, he was more of a single family fix and flip guy. And he thought all his private lenders would translate right into multifamily, and they just weren't comfortable with a different asset class. And this was his first deal. Now, eventually, this guy has thousands of units, and he kept pushing on it, and he's raised millions of dollars, and he's done well with it. But this was his first foray into this world. And so, long story short, we've got 400 grand, and we need $1.2 million. And so I called the sponsor. I told him the situation. And we just went all hands on deck. Myself, my cousin Yaden, the sponsor, and I called everybody in my phone book. I emailed everybody and just had conversations after conversations. And little by little, 50 grand, 75 grand, 100 grand at a time, we got the commitments in. And, a couple days before closing, we finally got all the capital raised, and we closed that deal. And I think we had maybe 10 grand left in the bank account after we closed. I mean, it was tight. It was very tight, but we've taken that deal full cycle. We've refinanced. We bird the money out in 2 years and got all the investors all their capital back. And so it turns into a great deal. But that was my first trial by fire of raising money from more than just one person, and not an insignificant amount.
Now, you mentioned one of the things, and that's working with someone who's been through market cycles. And doing that, why do you think, in your mind, and I think a lot of people know in general, but why is it so important to deal with people or a company or whatever who has dealt with market cycles?
Well, just because they've seen it before a lot of times. History doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it rhymes, and they've seen rates go up. They've seen rates go down. They've seen multifamily pricing and commercial pricing go through the roof. They've seen it tank. And they understand the financing. That was my biggest sense of comfort with working with these loan sponsors. Was they owned a bunch of assisted living facilities. They had a bunch of commercial real estate. They were in their 40s and 50s, and they were great advisors to me when I was first getting going to help me structuring the debt. Because, imagine if for the last 2-3 years you had been listening to a guy who had been preaching, go out there, buy the messed up stuff, the half empty stuff, the heavy value add renovation stuff that you can make a great whack of money on, which you can. Do it on 2-year bridge debt, do it on a floating rate, and it's going to be fine. You're going to refinance out, and you're going to get a 3.5-4% fixed debt, and this was your assumptions, right? Now you're coming full circle on your deal, and dude, your stabilized debt is more expensive than your bridge debt was, right? And so that happened to me. Some of the people that I listened to, and I got into some deals that were very, very risky. And I mean, we got them all sold before things got really bad, but it was scary. And I realized, holy crap, it really matters the models you choose and how you structure these deals. because some of these ways that you can structure these heavy value adds, like they can take you down if you're buying stuff and you can't get the stabilized debt on it.
Yeah. So when it comes to kind of, I want to shift back towards the beginning of your venture. You mentioned your first one didn't go that well, and yet you persevered. There's a lot of people out there who either right now haven't gotten a deal, or they have had a deal, or maybe they even have two, but one of them's gone sideways and they're starting to question kind of, is real estate really the answer? Oh, I'm just, going down a road that's going to be filled with potholes and I'm never going to get ahead. Kind of, what do you say to those people?
So it is difficult. It is. And it's not going to, I mean, it may come together easy for you. But I bought a course, studied and looked for 2 years before I ever put anything under contract, just because I'm busy. I got kids, I got a full-time job, and I couldn't find anything. I didn't even know how to analyze or underwrite a deal. And it was very easy to just let life take over. But the thing is 5 years from now is going to be here. It's time marches on. We're going to wake up and we're going to be 5 years older, 5 years closer to the grave, 5 years closer to retirement. And when you just have your head down, grinding, doing what you've always done, because that's easy, that's the routine, you're going to be in the same position in 5 years as you are today. Right. And so if you pick your head up and start to look and think like, where do I want to be in 5 years? Right. Well, I want to own 100 doors, or I want to own 1,000 doors, or whatever you want to do. Well, okay, that seems so far off and fuzzy and distant and almost impossible. And when you trace it back and take it back to like, what do I need to do today? What is the one domino that I need to be working on right now that if I knock that domino over, I can knock over the next one? And that's all you got to focus on. And it may take a lot of time, effort to knock over that first domino. But the flip side is you're going to be down the road in 5 years anyways. And so what's the risk, right? And so for me, that first domino I had to knock over was education, right? The foundation of like, what is a deal? How do you structure it? How do you raise money? How do you find stuff? How do you talk to brokers? How do you put things under contract? The legal side, how do you submit an LOI? Understanding the verbiage, all that stuff. Once you figure that out, then the next domino is, okay, I got to make offers and I got to have appointments and meetings with investors. And if I just make offers and I have meetings and I make offers and I have meetings, eventually something's going to crack. But you are in a fragile state there. You're like, it's easy to get discouraged. It's easy to want to quit. And I think that just, that separates the 95% from the 5%. I mean, if you read that book, The Slight Edge, like literally only 5% of people really are truly successful and achieve their goals and visions. 95%, they give up because it takes too long and it's too hard. But that curve, I mean, it's flat for so long and then boom. And that's what happened to me. 2.5 years and wham, close 300 units in a year. So it took a while of pushing to break through that wall. And a lot of people aren't willing to work that long without seeing immediate results.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, real estate is not a linear path at all. I mean, it's definitely a hockey stick where, 3, 4, or 5 years in, you look down and you're like, oh, I've got a lot of equity I can deploy. Suddenly, this has become real, but they have those first couple of years pushing through and just, property, slow and steady, like you were saying, if you're in it for cash flow, getting all of that. Or, I mean, even if you go in and you're, like you were saying, kind of the appreciation guy going in there, you still have to wait. I mean, the appreciation still takes time, even if you're just going that route. So tell us a little bit, you mentioned, kind of your journey, kind of market cycles, all of that. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing now. I mean, we've talked a little bit about it, obviously, but who's your buy box? Like, who's your customer avatar? Who's somebody who would actually be somebody that you would want to potentially work with in your business? Right.
So about 3 years ago, I formed a Facebook group called My First Million in Multifamily. And the reason I formed it was to just teach people to gain investors I hoped that would maybe invest with me. I also hoped to gain lead flow on deals, people that had maybe found something and they wanted to partner with me or flip it to me for a fee or something like that. So I started this group and it exploded. I mean, we added a lot of value. We did 2 shows a week and it went from, 1,000 to 5,000 to 10,000. I mean, we're at over 25,000 people in this Facebook group now. And I would have calls with people that they'd want to pick my brain. They'd want to learn. And I talked to them for 30, 40 minutes. They'd get excited, but I really wasn't giving them enough, right, to actually close deals because I'm very achievement oriented and I want to help people achieve their dreams. I hate to see people that are stuck in a dead end job that they hate. They don't see a path to getting a couple $1,000,000 at retirement. It just seems like they're on this treadmill. And so I realized if I really want to help these people, I've got to document what we're doing. And so Yaden and I, my cousin, we documented everything. We videoed it. We created a 96 video course and we sold this course. We sold this course for $2,000 and we sold a lot. I mean, we sold hundreds of thousands of dollars of this course, but it wasn't fulfilling because the success rate was very low. And I know, I mean, I'm telling you the truth about my own course. Like it just wasn't there. And I know because I bought a course and I sat on it for 2 years. And people were coming back to us and saying, look, you need to have mentoring. You need to have an ongoing group. You need to create a community where we can close deals because multifamily is a team sport. It really is, way more so than single family. And so I thought, okay. And so we formed the deal room. And so the deal room is the course, which is the foundation bedrock. But then I plugged my network of loan sponsors in there. I plugged my network of multimillionaires, investors, capital raisers, people that have deal flow and are looking to place capital. And I put in there like mentoring where we're going over your underwriting with you. We're helping you submit the offers. We're making sure that you feel confident because you're making big decisions, big offers, and you cannot screw it up. And we're also putting you into small groups, accountability groups of 8 to 10 people, deal sprints to modify the behavior to help you knock over the next domino and do the next thing and clarify that so that you can get results. And last year, 76 people closed their first multifamily apartment. And so we've gotten real tight on who we can help. And that is people that are in real estate full time or own a business or people that already have rental properties because we know they're successful. They achieve their goals. What they set out to do, they do. We just shift their focus to multifamily, help them close bigger deals and get into these bigger syndications. So those are the people that I work with now. And it's super fulfilling. And it still builds into my vertical of closing deals. I partner with people. I invest with people. And but I'm not trying to give them a fish. I'm trying to teach them to build their own 1,000-unit portfolio that they can have a large tranche of equity in.
Yeah, fantastic. So I want to go into some of our rapid fire questions that we like to ask here. So where's the market 1 year from now?
As far as like rates and pricing?
Just in general, yeah. We'll go with rates and pricing, sure.
So my best guess would be rates are flat. You know, they're maybe coming down a little bit. I would say hopefully they're still at 6.5. I think pricing is still high. I think that there are one-off sellers that are even more motivated, right? They, for whatever reason, they want to move, they want to retire, their loan is coming due, they've got to refinance, et cetera, and they're going to sell that property, whatever it takes, and they're going to get creative if they want to get their price, or they're going to slash their price if they want to get cash. So I don't think that we're going to go down the, elevator into the 3-4% rates. I think inflation will not really be able to be put under control. I think that they're going to adjust to our new normal is 3 to 4% inflation. That's our new target. And that's only going to help multifamily guys, right? As rents continue to climb and costs of living, our mortgages stay fixed. They stay the same. So I think that that's going to be a good thing. I don't think we're going to head off the cliff of a recession. I think that this is a very different scenario than 2008, 9, 10. So I think the single family, which is a big driver of the economy, people have locked into great 25, 30-year mortgages at great low rates. And unless they absolutely have to move, then they're not. And they're just going to sit tight. And so I think that the housing market is going to cool a little bit, but it's not going to fall off the cliff. And so I think the crypto markets will be up. I think that we'll be right in full swing of the bull market coming towards the middle to end of that. And then the stock market, I don't know, man. I don't really follow the stock market that much.
Oh yeah, we were sticking with real estate. You said an interesting thing. I want to pause the rapid fire for a second. You said rates will hopefully still be at 6.5%. Is that just because what you were saying in terms of the of rents, or kind of why hopefully?
Well, I just think that I just hope they don't keep raising them more. I mean, right now we're looking at a 25% basis point rate hike, or maybe flat, or maybe 50 basis points. I don't know. I thought if you'd asked me 6 months ago, I thought that by now we'd definitely be holding steady and maybe even starting to see the glimmer of rate decreases. But if you look historically, they raise rates slowly and then they drop them fast. Here, they've raised rates fast, and so I just don't know. I don't know how serious they're going to get on continuing to raise, because they really just can't afford their debt payment. And we're also seeing like banks that have locked up deposits in 10-year bonds. We're seeing them starting to get in trouble, right? Because depositors want to pull their funds out of their bank and put them in somewhere that'll give them 3, 4, 5% on a money market. And the funds aren't there. The funds are locked in a 10-year treasury. That's why SVB went down. SVB didn't go down because they didn't have the cash. It's because they locked it up in 10-year bonds. So I don't think they're limited with how high they can raise these rates. I don't think that this is like the 70s, 80s where they can raise rates to 10, 12, 14%. That's just not an option. We have too much debt now. We won't be able to service our debt if we do that.
All right. So what market are you most excited to invest in right now?
I love markets where I can get a good metric on my purchase price, like all in to rental rate. So for example, I just bought a 34 unit in Ohio with a deal room guy. Deal room guy brought it to me. We gave him the down payment. We got him the loan, but we got it for $40,000 a unit. It's full. We're renting it for $750 a month. I love that. We're almost at 2% on that rent metric. I like Tulsa, Oklahoma. I got a 208 unit in Tulsa, Oklahoma that we're all in for $40,000 a door. We rent for $750 to $800 a unit. I like Indiana. I like Ohio. I like Oklahoma, and I like the Southeast. I like Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. Those are a little bit hotter markets, so it can be more difficult to find a deal that pencils there. But I'm liking the Midwest a lot.
All right, and so you mentioned kind of the rent value purchase price number. Is there a metric that whenever you're actually diving into it a little bit more that's your favorite, or do you kind of just stick with that rent to purchase?
Well, there's a lot of when you're underwriting multifamily, the thing that massively swings your underwriting is your cap rate and your expense ratio. So if you underwrite with an expense ratio like a single family home, maybe 35, 40%, I mean, your multifamily deal is going to look phenomenal. But most multifamily properties don't run at that expense ratio. And so the same thing with if you underwrite it at a 5.5 cap rate, and single family guys, they don't super pay attention to that because they're just looking at like what have the other homes in the area sold for. Whereas with a commercial, it's all about the cap rate and what's the net operating income. So you take the net operating income divided by the cap rate, and that's your valuation of the building. And so a 5.5 cap versus a 6.5 cap rate is a huge swing in valuation, millions of dollars sometimes, depending on the deal. And so if you get too aggressive with a really low cap rate on your underwriting, and you get too aggressive with lowering the expenses, you can fake yourself into a good deal. And so I really look at those three things as like, what can I get in the market for rents right now? What's the cap rate of the market right now? and what are the real expenses on this property. If I can figure out those three things, I've got a really good handle on if this is a deal or not.
All right. And so what's your biggest win and loss in real estate deals?
So my biggest loss was a $6.1 million deal that I did in Clemson, South Carolina, which is my alma mater. Go Tigers. But we bought this property. It was a good deal, but kind of like talking about how you structure deals and the danger of them. I got into this deal with a very aggressive bridge loan. It had a variable rate. It was a 2-year term. It had a lot of extra fees, 3 points in, and it had a construction management fee and a loan management fee and the escrows. They were making us escrow the taxes and insurance, and we hadn't underwritten it correctly for the cash flow. And so we had raised the money with a 10% preferred return, and I think 30% of the equity was going to the investors. So a high preferred return with a lower equity split. And so we ran into issues. We ran into issues with the management company. We ran into issues with the renovations taking too long, going over budget. We were going through COVID, labor and material overages,
all lining up perfect for you.
It was a perfect storm. Yeah. And so we ended up at the end of the day doing this deal, renovating, 70 something percent of it, getting it to 90% occupancy and selling it to break even. Right. So the investors got their money back. I think there was like a $50,000 profit. They got all that because we owed them a 10% pref. They ended up making 3%, 4% on their money, and we made nothing. We worked for free for almost 2 years and took on a crap ton of risk and effort to do that. So thank God, we didn't lose anybody any money, but it was definitely a heartache of a project to take all that risk. And now the investors, they were cool. They were like, hey, you communicated with us. We'd be happy to invest with you again. We know all deals aren't home runs, but yeah, that was probably my biggest loss because it was super stressful for 2 years. It was a super stressful deal. And my favorite deal is probably Oklahoma. So Oklahoma, this was the same scenario, right? It was distressed. It was half empty. It needed a big renovation, but we got a 5-year fixed loan on it, right? And so that takes the immense pressure off of the deal. So in doing that, we were able to take the rent roll from $55,000 a month to $120,000 a month. We filled it up to 98% occupancy. We finished all the renovations, and we ended up being all in for $8 million. So we bought it for $5.5 million, put $2.5 million into it, all in for $8 million. It appraised for $14 million, and we refinanced out all the money. We refinanced at $9.5 million. So we paid everybody back, and we got a check for $1.5 million. We got a 10-year non-recourse Fannie Mae loan, fixed at 4.25%, interest only for 3 years. Phenomenal loan. And so that was probably, and now it cash flows like $30K a month, like clockwork. And so that's probably my favorite deal.
That's not a bad one. Not a bad one at all. And so looking back at yourself, 5 years ago, and you talk about the 5-year goals, what would you tell yourself in terms of, thinking big? Did you achieve your goals from 5 years ago, or would you tell yourself dream bigger?
I did. I achieved my goal was 1,000 units by the time I was 50. And so, I'm not quite there because, right, I don't own them 100%, but I would say the thing that I screwed up with was trying to do it alone, right? When I bought the course and studied it for 2 years, nothing happened. When I started to plug into networks, go to conferences, make connections, get around other people that were doing this, that's when things really started to click for me. And so I could have been 2 years ahead, right? I could have been buying, instead of buying in 2018 and 19, I could have been buying in 2016 and 18. And so I think that being prepared and getting around the right people, and I'm in masterminds now, and I really focus on who I'm surrounding myself with. And at the time, I did not realize that was that important. I just thought, I'm an island, I can figure this out myself.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, Jennings, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time. The website is jenningssmithjr.com. That's jenningssmithjr.com. Again, really appreciate it. Is there any final words you want to send to our listeners on the way out?
No, I appreciate you having me on the show, Adam. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, for the listeners, I would say you don't have to figure it all out right away, but you have to get started, right? So what's the one thing that you can do today? If you're out there dreaming, wanting to close your first rental home, close your first apartment deal, get out of this job or career you hate, what's the one thing that I can work on today that even if it only moves me 1% towards where I'm going, at least I'm on that path. So don't overwhelm, just get started. You don't have to get it perfect. Just got to get it started.
All right. Well, really appreciate it. To everybody else, you can head on over to renttoretirement.com to see those single family homes he's talking about starting with. You can see right there on our website, schedule a time to talk with us. Don't forget, if you want the report that Zach put together of the top 20 markets to invest in 2023, you can email that request to podcasts@renttoretirement.com. That's podcasts@renttoretirement.com. And as a reminder, if you leave us a review on whatever podcast platform you're using, send a screenshot to podcasts@renttoretirement.com. We'll send you a $10 gift card as a thanks and enter you into a $500 closing cost credit raffle. That's podcasts@renttoretirement.com. Thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks for taking the time to educate yourself, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.
Thanks for watching the Rent to Retirement YouTube channel. Check out some of our other videos, like this one, or this one here.